In New York, everything is free. You can do everything for free in New York.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
really?
everything, bitch.
I never heard about it.
Everything. Let me know when you're rolling.
Rolling.
What's going on? My name is Miss Boogie, and it is 11:37 p.m. in Paris, and I'm here to promote my latest single, Breakdown, all the way from Brooklyn, and putting on for all the femme queens in the world and all the girls that couldn't make it, and the girls that are not here with us. I'm here representing them. So, what's the tea? I can go so many places. I'm connected to Brooklyn, Dominican Republic, Colombia. Those are 3 places that I've spent time in and that my family is from. And I'm very much connected to all 3 of those cultures. But I was born in New York, and I always tell people I was born in 2 places because it's like I almost didn't make it to New York. Well, my mom didn't almost didn't make it to New York while she was pregnant with me. But I also went right back as soon as I was born.
Okay.
So to live for a while. And growing up in the Dominican Republic, it was the first time I was really made aware of my femininity, right? At that time when I was a kid, of course, I was like boy presenting, or like whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't call it masculine presenting. I was just boy presenting, and I just preferred certain social activities like hanging out with my girlfriends or playing with dolls, like things that you can't make up. You can't deny them. You can't. They're just natural attractions to feminine things and preferences that at that age you can't put a name to it. You can't put a label to it. So I was very much, non-binary in many ways as a kid. And that was the first place that I was made aware of that. And that was also the first place that I was like picked on for being an effeminate boy or whatever. But I didn't internalize any of that, like that, I guess, bullying or being picked on. For me, it was more revealing than anything else, right? Like I learned about myself through what people had to say about me at that era of my life. So at that point, I was able to reflect on the fact that I was an effeminate person. And then later on, I started to realize that that was the gateway to my je ne sais quoi. Is that how you say it? My
Je ne sais quoi.
Je ne sais quoi, right?
Yeah, so you were talking about like discovering your femininity and like also like these different places where you been raised. Yeah.
Yes. So, being raised in the Caribbean, I realized that my femininity was a superpower. It's something about the weather, something about the way your body feels in the heat that just activates something in you, right? It activates this glow that you just can't explain. And I discovered that in the Dominican Republic. And yeah, then by the time I made it to Brooklyn, I made it there in time for like high school, I would say. And at that point, I realized that I had to make a decision in my identity, because getting there as an immigrant, essentially, even though I was already born there, when I got back from the Dominican Republic, I had to go to like bilingual classes and stuff, and ESL, English as my second language, which it wasn't. I had to adapt, but I also had to make decisions in my identity, in my culture identity, as well as like just my gender identity. And shortly after that, I guess fast forward, I discovered the village, and the village is where I saw people that looked how I felt. And then I discovered a part of me that didn't have words or didn't have a description or that I didn't see in school. And I guess I would say here we are today, but a lot else happened in between. But here we are today. Make some motherfucking noise. Can y'all see me? Make some noise if y'all can see me.
Okay, so that's maybe when the, like at this moment that you entered into the ballroom scene, because I've seen you've been part of the ballroom scene.
Yeah, so the ballroom scene definitely played a huge part in the research that I had to do to figure out who I wanted to be or how I wanted to show up in the world, especially physically. But it also taught me a lot of things, but I wouldn't say that my experiences in ballroom molded me. I would say that they added to my story, right? Because I was there for a specific reason and it was for research. I was not there for the competition. I don't have a competitive spirit. My mother never taught me to compete. She just taught me to conquer, so I skipped the competition part. But so that's why ballroom, I didn't really like stick around for ballroom because I didn't feel the need to compete against anybody that was going through the same thing that I was going through. Like, it's just...
Yeah, makes sense. And it's funny because, it's something like when we look for information about you on internet, or it's something that comes a lot, like you've been part in the ballroom scene, and actually like what you tell us about it, it's a bit like, different. It's interesting.
It is interesting because, journalists will say what they understand, not what's the most true to the person that they're interviewing, right? Like, it's like they'll say what their readers will understand. So of course, in order to create a path for their story, I come from ballroom. But
how did you feel in love with music and with rap music especially?
Well, for me, the way I fell in love with rap music was very organic. It was just basically a soundtrack to where I'm from, right? Like, rap is just native to New York. And it was just one of the first things I listened to, the first things that gravitated to me. And, of course, since I'm multicultural, because I lived through a multicultural experience, I end up gravitating to a lot of different genres just by nature, right? Like, what they would play at my auntie's birthday party would be different than what I would listen to on my own time or what I would hear on television or on the radio.
Yeah.
But rap was the music that I used to connect to my friends with, like to connect to my friends. And, whether it be in music, whether it be in the streets. And I first became attracted to, of course, like female rappers because I saw that they were willing to talk about unpopular things because they were an unpopular figure in music, right? So what I love the most about women in rap is the protest element. A lot of the female rappers, especially the ones that started in the game, like MC Lyte, Salt and Pepper, Queen Latifah, their music was about the protest of femininity in a space that femininity wasn't honored or existed in. And I basically have remixed that with my womanhood and my version of womanhood, which is my transness, like just being a femme queen. And as far as the genre goes, of course, there are a lot of things that I love about it, the sonics, the journeys, the aggression. But for me personally, I'm attracted to the protest element of hip hop. Yeah, I mean, and I don't assume that every artist, every rapper has to do that or assume their responsibility, but I do understand that there are some rappers that have to do it. And I think in the spectrum of like femme queens and black trans women in hip hop, that's the responsibility that I take on. I want to talk about the things that aren't so pretty, the things that we struggle with, and the things that make us complex and dangerous, That's the narrative I chose to tell in my music. But of course, we need some girls to talk about pussy popping and some girls to talk about you know, just all the fun stuff. Like, that's also really important.
Yeah.
Pinch nose, be facing, you basic. I know you hate it, so fucking amazing. How these cats they hating, I like this amazing. Like a shit on my plate, cause it's not job. I'm on every nigga's wish list. Come swimming like a big fish. Training this shit man's favorite dish. Eat me, then I dip dip.
Freedom of expression, or the liberty of expression. Yeah. How do you say it in French?
La liberté d'expression.
La liberté d'expression, darling, is so important. That is the one thing that is going to allow you to feel free from the beginning to the end.
Connected to my next question, because I was curious, you know, I've followed you, like I've listened to your music before, your transition, and then like you kind of disappear, you enter into what we call a hiatus, and then you came back with this this open letter in paper magazine, talking about your transition, and I was wondering, like, because it's such a, I think it's both hard and liberating to do that, because it's also like taking a risk and exposing yourself to the public, and I wanted to know how it feels for you, and how did it come out?
So I forget what year that was, but I vividly remember that I was in a crossroads between embracing my identity and continuing to flourish and feed my creativity, and especially with the way that it affected my fans, right? And it was just a difficult place, because everybody hates to have to choose between their love and their passion, or their reality and their creativity. That's always a tug of war, right? Like, can I afford to be creative? Like, well, reality says I need to get a job to clock in and clock out of, but also in reality, you could be a struggling artist for the rest of your life if that's what you're passionate about.
Yeah,
you will find a way, you know? So, everybody hates to be in that position, well, at least I did. So it was very difficult. But it was a personal decision, and a good friend of mine named Justin Morin, editor-in-chief at Paper Magazine, gave me that space and gave me that platform, and I very much asked for it, because I recognized that there was not an example of me in hip-hop and in rap. I wasn't able to look at anyone that had transitioned in the public eye in this genre. I wasn't able to look at anyone that already transitioned in this genre, whether you came in it as trans or not. There was just no example. And I knew for a fact that I wasn't going to stop making music. No matter, even though I thought about it several times, I knew I wasn't going to stop making music. So it was really important to me to have to express my journey. I didn't have to, but it was important to me. To express my journey and what it was going to take for me to be able to revisit my music. Because, you know, like, rap saved my life in many ways, and it showed me the world in a time where I wasn't sure if I was ever going to be able to see it. Like, as a queer person, you know, in their early, like, 20s or whatever, from the hood, like, it's not common that you get to see the world, right? Like, it's very easy to succumb to your experience and just sink in the adversity, and you don't think about the diversity, right? So because of music, I was able to see the world before 30. Like, I was a luxury that I could not keep to myself. And I wanted to make sure that other people like me understood that there was access to that. And now, most importantly, I want to make sure that Black trans women understand that, yeah, by you being creative and doing something cool that you like, that you think is cool, you could potentially conquer the world, if that's your mission. I did it. Am I a millionaire? No. Do I make millions off of my music? No. But I've been places that people like me often don't get to be.
Yeah.
And I want to sit back and watch other women like me be in those places. I want to enjoy the show too. I don't always want to have to be the showgirl, you know? So that letter and coming out publicly and coming out on paper was my way of documenting that. Like, that is a letter that any girl in any generation can read and say, oh shit, like, I can do this. Especially the transition part, right? Because it's one thing to come in already in your womanhood, but it's another thing to have to be comfortable with the before and after being so public.
Yeah.
You know, that's like any trans woman's like nightmare.
Yeah.
You know, like having their before and after so publicized vocally.
Because they love to talk about the before and they love it. They
You
love
know,
to bring it out.
especially publicly, I mean, especially visually, sonically, like
Yeah,
all those things. My voice is out there, like, you know, my look, my aesthetic, my pronouns, you know, and then sometimes I beat myself up and I'm like, damn, like, that was only like 6 years ago. Like, did I make it far? Like, am I far enough from my past where I can finally move on? But it's not always about abandoning. Sometimes it's about just adding to the experience, you know?
Yeah.
So that's something I had to do because it's like, ever so often I'm still cringing at like people putting together all of those clues and like bringing things from the past. And I mean, I never want to give people the idea to Google me because I know they'll go down a dark hole and probably bring up like super things that I just don't find comfortable now. But, you know, it's always a thing. Like, it's always a possibility that people can weaponize your past.
Since you're coming back from your hiatus, you emphasize the importance of Femqueen Joy. What does it mean for you and why is it important?
Oh my God, that's such a beautiful question. I almost forgot that I hashtagged that for a little bit, but it was a good time. Femqueen Joy is just about bringing light to something that's not very popular, right? Like, I don't think a lot of people get to see girls like me thriving in happy spaces, joy, being loved on, making money. It's not very common to people. I'm not saying that anyone's hating on us or against it. I'm not going to blame anyone, but I just don't think that it's a common vision that people see attached to femme queens. So it's like people have a very limited scope, and for some reason it doesn't include us being joyful. So Femqueen Joy was about promoting that. So Breakdown is a song about survival. In my community, back in New York, I don't know if this is lingo internationally or nationally, but when you speak to your elders about starting your transition, they're like, all right, you gotta break yourself down. Like, you know, break down your thing, your features, your whatever you wanna break down to become closer to the person you wanna be. That's what they tell you first, is that take your hormones, break it down, and then build it back up. So that's the breakdown.
It's that BK, prissy, princess, oh my fitness, mind your business. I'm so precious, oh so vicious. It's that breakdown, so you better listen.
So we've seen since the past 2 years, USA being like burdened by transphobic attack in a political place with a lot of bills, transphobic bills being voted or like passing or not, but like in different states and also nationally. We know that as a black trans woman, you always been targeted by violence even before all these bills. How can you organize? What can you do with all this situation and all the violence?
I think for me in particular, the way I respond, of course, is through my music. Number one, I respond like through myself, just showing up and being present, and like just walking out the house, honestly, is a protest as a trans woman. Like, it's like, bitch, keep your head up high and keep your eyes behind your head wide open, you know? And I think that that's something that people really need to understand. And I'm sure that there are other marginalized people that feel that way when they walk out the house. But I don't think people believe us when we say it, right? Because they say it's a choice. So the way I respond to social injustice that is particularly targeted to women like me is through my art, right? So that's one form. I'm not afraid of being political. I'm not afraid of being part of conversations through my music. I understand that it's not everybody's duty, but it's a responsibility that I assume as an artist of my nature. And I've kind of always been like that, even before Miss Boogie was Miss Boogie. I also understand that not a lot of people want to admit that we also are targeted, right? Or that it's not our fault that we're targeted or that we're being murdered or all those like really morbid things. So stepping out of the house with that sense of awareness is also just, it's exhausting, but it's also very political in a way, right? Like you have to be active, you have to be an activist, you have to, even if you don't want to, it's just comes with your territory, you have to stand for something, which is something that I think everybody should do if they're part of a marginalized community. It's like stand for something and not against, you know what I mean, people who are working towards the same goal with you. So in response to politicians and cis people who have, I don't want to say agendas against trans people, but just have biases or have sentiments that are not, I don't want to be offensive. It's really hard because it's like you don't want to internalize the treatment that you're given by others and retaliate. You don't want to like treat them the same way. But yeah, like if you have anything to say about trans people that's not positive or that's not about our progression, fuck you, first of all. Second of all, stand up for your people. If there's a divide, I want to see you march for what you believe in, whatever that is. But just know that at that march, we're going to meet there, whether you like it or not. And I'm not coming to fight. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not coming, I don't want power. So what I think we can do as a community, again, same thing, like just stand up for what you believe in as long as it's not against someone who is working on the same goal as you. I know that's like very layered, but if you think about it and break it down, at the bottom of the problem, you'll find the common threads with other people. So in our community, I would just say stand up for something. Don't stay quiet, please. There's not that many of us, right? There aren't that many trans women in the world, especially trans women of color. So we can't afford to stay quiet or ignore each other's issues. So that's my word for social injustice. Thank you.
Thank you for everything. Thank you for your heart. Thank you. I can't wait to listen to your new album.
Me, I can't wait to listen to my new album. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Yeah? Okay, fab.
It's that BK, prissy, princess. Oh my fitness, mind your business. I'm so precious, oh so vicious. It's that breakdown, so you better listen. Black Ben so galactic.